Well, all the indicators on mental health are up in bad ways. Suicidal ideation and actual suicides amongst children gone way up. Mental health crises that require hospitalizations, way up. Many schools have talked about kids who are fighting more, and there's more disruption in school. In part because kids have to get reacquainted with being at school, but also because kids are bringing back with them challenges and stress and anxiety.
For example, this year, 5 of my students have been hospitalized for emotional issues and suicidal ideation. In addition, I've had 3 students who are bullied so badly they've changed districts.
Schools are literally overwhelmed, and we don't have enough mental health workers out there to respond to the needs. So, teachers are in effect becoming the first responders. They're identifying it, they're seeing it, but they're not equipped a lot of times to respond effectively.
Bullying has always existed in middle schools, forever. But the amount of emotional and social difficulties I've seen has just exploded, and it's been very challenging.
I think what it might be helpful to understand as teachers, as we are trying to grapple with making sense of students' behaviors, students' mental health instabilities, issues, our own, right, also, is that fundamentally at their core, the things people do, the behaviors we engage because they are our best known way to cope with whatever it is we are trying to accommodate ourselves to. Somehow what they're doing is their way of trying to build themselves some kind of coherent pattern, way to be, in a space that they don't know how to manage themselves in.
Students have a hard time coming back from tough situations, and emotions are so big. It's always the end of the world. The problem is always so much bigger than them and then what they can do about it. So they want to escape, or they want to avoid it altogether.
There's a lot of science behind mental health, and science can prove so much, but there's a lot that science can't prove. So talking about the science part of it, we look at things like hormones and neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, cortisol, oxytocin. Some of it's caused by genetics, a lot of it's caused by the environment or epigenetics. There's overall a change in the way that hormones are being regulated these days. So previously, there was a lot more social connection and interconnectedness between individuals, right? When I was growing up, we were playing outside all the time, we were running around, we were exploring, we were actually at play. And if you can think about yourself at play, it's one of the most joyful times when you're exploring and all stress kind of goes away. And your brain is really molding, and the synapses are firing, and you're pruning all these things, and it's like an explosion in your brain, and it's a good explosion in your brain. What's happening now is that kids are much more isolated. And with kids, their prefrontal cortex, or the area that helps them to make executive decisions and control impulses and agitation, is not fully formed. But what is there and what overrides all of their behavior is the limbic system. And that's the one that's a little bit more impulsive. And kids are programmed to seek reward, right? They're programmed to seek things that make them feel happy. Social media uses algorithms to constantly push reward. So it's very easy for the limbic brain in people to get hijacked and to be taken over by social media. What happens now is that the limbic system is the one that's being focused. The prefrontal cortex is not developing at the same rate or the complexity that it used to. And the adolescence period is almost somewhat being extended in chronological age now. And so when things trigger them, or when they're in a really difficult situation, it is really easy for them to act out. Even depression, particularly in males or in boys, depression is often expressed as anger and irritability.
In my field of prevention science, we really start with counting the thing we want to prevent. We really start with prevalence. And when we count the number of kids that are struggling right now, how can you not start there? But then you have to think about why.
I think the behaviors are different nowadays, but then so are our policies. And I think we also have to take a look at that right now too, because some of our policies is driving why we're seeing certain behaviors in the classroom.
I think through the pandemic, we gave a lot of grace, but I think somewhere the line hasn't been drawn of like, okay, like you need to learn from, there has to be consequences eventually.
I think maybe we used to be a little too harsh and then we overcorrected. I remember when I was in school, it was the phone was in the backpack and that was the end of the conversation. But now there's really no set in stone rule for the teachers to enforce to then help the kids have structure to make it so that they can focus in class. That has kind of become a pattern I've noticed with a lot of rules, not just phones, where a lot of the rules feel very unclear. And I think the students know that the rules are unclear and that the teachers' hands are a little bit tied as far as enforcing the rules goes. But we owe it to the kids to give them more structure in the form of rules that are enforced and then followed up by a clear, natural consequence, nothing crazy, but you're on your phone in class, phone gets taken away. Natural consequence, very simple.
And when students misbehave and they get a consequence and other students see that it's not an equal consequence to their behavior, then the students think, oh, well, if I do it too, then I'll get away with it as well.
Not being able to discipline a child who is going off in a classroom and saying horrible things to teachers or tossing things, teachers have to take that now.
Well, it's, excuse my language, but it's crap. What am I supposed to do about that? If I'm a teacher in the classroom, child is throwing chairs, and your school districts they're fairly good at figuring out, no, physically, this is what you got to do, this is the policy, this is going to, okay, we get to that point. But the problem is that kid's going to be in my class, if not next day, maybe the day after, whatever, they're coming back to my space. How do I deal with that?
As educators, I understand that you're dealing with behaviors that are challenging to work through, and that safety is a concern. The behaviors that you experience that are threatening, that don't calm down, that have you feeling unsuccessful, those are not okay behaviors. And there are ways to help manage those behaviors and to get those students on your side.
A lot of the mental health issues we're dealing with right now, they don't require some drastic innovative technology or medication to come out. What we really need to do is just come back to human connection and creating spaces with each other where we can really feel safe and where we can fully express our emotions and feel like the person is understanding it. And when a child gets dysregulated, it's oftentimes because they feel like they're not actually being heard or seen in that environment. And the only way they can do that is to make a loud scene and noise.
So rather than trying to control their behavior directly, what you really want to focus on is how could I find a way to build out a world for these young people where it becomes adaptive for them to behave in the ways we need them to behave.
So as humans, we are hardwired to connect with one another, right? There's this thing that's called mirror neurons. That's super important for us to understand, which is why if we're in a classroom where we have a teacher who is creating kind of empathy, then it's going to be easier for those students to reflect that empathy back. But something else happens with these mirror neurons, right? So if I have a teacher and I have students that walk into the classroom and all of a sudden they're given a math quiz and one or more students start flipping their lid, it is a natural reaction for the other person to flip their lid as well because of these mirror neurons. And as teachers, as adults, it's important to recognize when we begin to flip our lids in order that we can remain calm so that we can have the other person to be calm.
We've all seen those classrooms where it's love, care, support, there's a system in place, everyone has a certain level of expectations that don't necessarily have to be articulated. You take a student who's had a lot of challenges and you put them into that space, and they end up, right, taking on the behaviors and the energy and the love and the care and the feeling of that space. And so it's how do you scale that up as a school, right? And then when you start doing that with your schools, you start seeing that impact in the broader community. There's the African proverb, I'm gonna paraphrase it as best I can, but if a child doesn't feel the love of the village, that they'll burn it down in order to feel its warmth, right? And we see that all the time.
The school's the first one to say, you need to balance out your life. School is not everything, mental health is important. But when, the students were asking and were really pushing for this mental health day and to offer mental health resources to the students, the school said no. We have to go to school today. It's a school day. You have your classes.
I think teachers don't understand about students is probably what we went through and how we had to deal with that when we're developing and growing, and maybe the teachers might not think it's a big deal, but maybe for some kids it is.
I had a few teachers notice that I was struggling, but their view on mental health was very closed-minded, and they really think that it's just something you can choose to do and choose not to do, like you're lazy, or you're just choosing to not get yourself out of this rut. It's your choice. It's not a choice, it's a chemical imbalance. And I feel like a lot of my teachers, they saw that I was struggling and they just let things go.
A lot of kids don't feel that they want to speak to teachers because they may feel afraid that the teachers will go and talk to other teachers about their problems. So I don't think that we trust them.
Trusting a teacher for me looks like when I need to talk about something, they don't talk about it in front of everybody. I have this one teacher and she always pulls me out if I need to talk about something, and she's there to listen. So I do feel cared for because I feel like they're not just there to teach me, they're there for me too.
Students today not only need acceptance from their teachers, but they also need advice on how to become just a more well-rounded person from their teachers.
I just think it's extremely important for these teachers to share their stories, share what they've gone through, share advice with the students, because these teachers might have gone through similar things that we are dealing with. We are humans and they are humans too, and they're not robots. They're not just there to teach and to leave.
I think what's hard is oftentimes we expect educators to have all the answers. No one always has all the answers, and it's okay to be in a situation and not really know what to do. Because guess what? Students don't know what to do most of the time. And so let's just kind of approach things from that place of honesty and transparency and vulnerability. I think that's really hard for teachers to do.
I think it is scary sometimes as a teacher because you feel like you want to keep a professional boundary and you really want to make sure that everything that you're teaching and saying to your students is something that is educational or helpful. And I think when teachers are able to feel like they have that permission to model that they're not perfect and that they have things they go through too, and they still show up here every day, that our students really learn and take away a lot from that.
At the end of the day, what we really want is to be able to relate to one another and to feel heard, to feel like we belong, to feel like they understand me. And I feel understood when someone shares their story with me. And the more stories we have out there, the more diverse stories we have out there, the more people we can align ourselves with.
Oftentimes when we tell stories, we're inadvertently telling them to teach a lesson, to have a student make a different choice than maybe we made. And we're doing it almost in a finger wagging, don't do that because I know better. If we tell a story from how we felt in a certain circumstance, and we relate it to maybe how they're feeling in their circumstance, all that is an opportunity for us to connect through feeling. And in connection through feeling, there's relatability. And when there's relatability, there's trust is built. And when trust is built, learning can happen.
When you're an educator, you realize it's so much more than that. You become a teacher of emotion, you become a teacher of behavior, you become a teacher of the future. And we wouldn't be in this profession if we didn't care about bettering our students and supporting them. And that's the only reason we're here, because the job isn't easy.
What we've got to do is do a better job at supporting the teachers so they in turn can support the kids. But at the same time, not ask them to do too much. You can't ask a person to teach math and help kids deal with stress and anxiety.
The expectation to have teachers to be counselors as well is an unrealistic expectation. It's not fair for the teachers, it's not fair for the students. What makes more sense is that, we prepare teachers on how to create really healthy classrooms in which the teacher feels a part of this healthy classroom as well. And to be able to identify signs and symptoms of something that may be concerning, and then referring the student to a trained person who can then kind of dig into it.
The moment you recognize that there's something that's not right or that somebody needs help, we have to have that normalized, right? We're trying to destigmatize mental health services. And I think some of that, as a culture, once we realize that it's okay to not be able to be okay. It's okay to have things that are stacked up beyond what you can cope with. The idea of, hey, rub some dirt on it and get over it, those days are over. I mean, the only way that's going to get better is through early intervention, counseling, and normalization of what that counseling looks like.
I am really looking a lot at trauma-informed care, but I'm also cautioning not to identify the individuals who have experienced a trauma. They're not the worst thing that ever happened to them. So often in school systems, young children who can't regulate their emotions can, maybe act out, and then it's like follows them for the rest of their school career. And that's just not okay, because everyone should have an opportunity to keep redefining themselves. Every morning you wake up, you get to be a new person. So if you have the knowledge of someone, don't carry that in the forefront. Look at the individual and work with the young person especially, and ask them about their dreams.
Very often we go into what we think they need instead of listening to what they actually need. And I think that's one of my biggest fears, is that we sometimes move so fast trying to fix things that we don't realize you don't have to fix it. It's not for you to fix.
It's important for us to work with our students in a loving, kind, warm, supportive way, but not in a saving way. We can't take away the challenges that life offers, but we can help our students learn to manage, to cope, to work through, move through the things that are challenging. And in that, we're serving their well-being. We're serving their ability to recover from mental health challenges before they become mental health diagnoses.